Hey, everybody. Yeah, so this is a quicker little video that I wanted to make. I was having a look at some other aspects of Chapter 3, and this just kind of jumped out at me. So look, without further ado, guys, what's up with swooning? Okay, quick recap. Swooning is what happens to Ralsei or Susie during the Roaring Night fight in Chapter 3. If either of them go down, instead of entering the downed state, they instead enter a state called swooned. And being swooned leaves them at minus 999 health. They won't recover any health in between turns. And yeah, really can only be brought back by a revivement or a lot of food. Okay, pretty simple. It's just a state that you go into during a boss fight that you're largely meant to lose. So yeah, not that crazy. However, what really kind of makes this a little bit more mysterious, in my opinion, is the fact that Chris does not enter this state. Now, I always thought swooning was something that happened when you were romantically interested in somebody, but it seems that swooning is just the act of fainting due to maybe extreme emotion. Specifically when it comes to fear, it seems to be called vasovagal syncope, or reflex syncope. And interestingly, the symptoms for this condition is lightheadedness, nausea, cold sweats, tunnel vision, a sudden drop in heart rate and blood pressure, all of which seem to match up to the flavor text that is mentioned during the Roaring Night fight. We have your vision narrows, your chest feels tight, you feel lightheaded, you saw golden stars, your vision narrows, your head is spinning, you felt your chest twisting, you felt lightheaded, you felt the migraine coming on. Your heartbeat becomes twisted, Susie grew pale. Interestingly, Chris has the option to hold their breath, and holding their breath quickens their heartbeat, which makes the soul move faster. In real life, holding your breath would cause your blood pressure to go up, which would increase the rate of your heartbeat. However, this is a short-term solution, and funnily enough, child holding their breath is one of the more common ways of inducing this reflex syncope. And again, most of the symptoms stated during the flavor text during the fight would align with holding your breath. Again, why does this actually matter? What's the message here? Well, Susie also mentions that once her hands stop shaking, she's gonna kick the Roaring Knight's ass, showing that she is overcome with fear right now. This inducing of fear seems to be one of the abilities of the Roaring Knight. When we first meet them in Chapter 3, their chest opens and they scream, filling the room with this red aura. In my opinion, that is more meaningful, but maybe it's not literal, maybe it is just the aura of fear that's taking hold of everybody, which would have a similar impact. Susie and Ralsei aren't able to recover at all when they're swooned by the night because they're too terrified to stand back up, at least by themselves. Chris never has this problem, so to me it would indicate that Chris isn't truly afraid, or Chris has nothing to be afraid of here. If you hold your breath during the fight with the Roaring Knight, your heartbeat speeds up. However, if you hold your breath for a second time, it doesn't have any impact on the game, but Chris smiles. And in the context of this fight, Chris smiling seems really out of place. It seems like he's calm, like he's okay, like, oh, this doesn't have an impact on me. To me, maybe it's a coping mechanism, something Chris has already learned to do to deal with the Roaring Knight's influence. Unlike the others who aren't prepared, Chris is able to deal with the immense fear that is the aura of the Roaring Knight. There's plenty of evidence of Chris already working with the Knight. We have, or at least I'm having some relationship. We obviously have the scene where the Knight knights Chris. We have Chris refusing to view the Knight with their helmet off. We have, of course, the scene when the Knight is throwing swords at us in Chapter 4, and if we get to the end, Chris just stands there and waits to be pushed back. Even the creation of the third Dark World seems quite suspicious. But again, we have this one character, Chris, who is at least being impacted less than Susie and Ralsei while fighting the Roaring Knight. And if this was the first time that they had met them, I think the impact would be greater. Something more similar to Susie and Ralsei's reaction. Final point, Chris seemingly entered the shelter at some point in the past and maybe did so in front of Monster Kid, because Monster Kid makes note that something happened to Chris when going in, which is why he doesn't want to. I think that could have a lot more meaning to it. Maybe that's where he got the soul, but maybe that was also when they first met the Roaring Knight. And in doing so, they have either built up a tolerance, or they at least have learned some mechanism to negate some of the influence. He has a coping mechanism where he can hold his breath, which is maybe something he learned previously. However, I really do think it's the smile that is more indicative of Chris being either in a calm state of mind or a little bit corrupted already. But yeah, that's it. I think that this is further evidence that ties Chris and the Roaring Knight together. And I think it's this interesting way of explaining what SWOON is. Yeah, I just don't know if we're going to see the state again or the status again. It would make sense. And I can imagine other characters, Noelle, Birdley, any other person who might make it into a dark world could experience it. But I don't know if Susie and Ralsei are going to be as impacted by it going forward. Maybe Chris's coping mechanism doesn't help him that much, more that the Roaring Knight is just going easy on him. But I think that in this instance, the distinction matters. Chris never swoons to the Knight for a reason. And in my opinion, the only reason is that Chris has some form of coping mechanism, be it the holding of his breath, the Knight is going easy on him, or it's a combination of the both. Not to ramble too long, but yeah, swooning seems interesting in the way that it's differentiating Chris's mental state from Susie and Ralsei. It's either implying that they have been exposed to this presence before, they've been warned, they are working in cahoots, any of the above in my opinion, and it's something we're going to talk about a lot more in further videos. Okay, that is it for now. This is just a quick ramble to kind of get out my opinions on Swoon. All of this will be a lot more relevant to the big project I'm working on, which is the triple truth theory. So yeah, keep it easy, keep it good. God bless you, and we'll chat soon.